Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about the Dwarflabs Smart Telescope, which is part of a new class of telescopes we're starting to see more and more of these days. In part because detectors and optics have become a lot more capable and cheaper, but also, sadly, we need telescopes that can help us peer through the light pollution that most of us live under. Now let me begin by saying that the audience for this video are beginners. People who are not familiar with the night sky. Maybe you don't know where the constellations are, all of that kind of stuff, but you want to learn more. Maybe you're thinking of getting into the hobby of amateur astronomy, but you don't want to spend a lot of money. Or maybe you have family or friends or a precocious nephew that you'd like to just casually share the night sky with. If you are an advanced amateur looking to see the full capabilities of this telescope, then I'm going to point you to Cuiv's videos that are in the description box. He's an advanced amateur who's really gone in depth with many of the features of this telescope that would be advantageous for amateurs to take a look at. The links are down in the description box. Now these telescopes are called smart telescopes, and they follow the same kind of paradigm, I guess, that smart telephones use. I mean, telephones can make calls, sure, but they also do a lot more than that with all the apps that you can get. Smart telescopes can let you see stars, galaxies, and nebulae, sure, but they do a lot more than that behind the scenes so that doing those things is a lot easier for you. Now, I've used most of the ones coming out these days, and while they're all very capable, some of them are quite expensive. This telescope here is in the $500 range, and that's one that I think is very accessible for beginners who just want to do casual observing, but it also has capabilities in nature photography as well. I'm actually thinking of taking this telescope to a rocket launch to see how the tracking thing works. It's got a tracking feature for daytime use as well. I haven't done that yet, but I plan to. Now, this telescope and others like it are, in my opinion, becoming quite important, especially for beginners. They help overcome a problem that is only getting worse: light pollution. Now, I'm told by people who study this stuff that our night skies are getting 10% brighter every year. This means that this year's night sky is 10% brighter than it was last year, and next year's night sky is going to be 10% brighter than this one, and on and on. Now, most of us, myself included, are having a hard time seeing the brightest stars in the sky to make out even the most familiar constellations over our heads. Seeing very dim things like nebulae and galaxies are even harder, especially if you're using eyepieces and your eyeball. Now, back in the day, this was the telescope I recommended to beginners. The Edmund Astroscan 2001, a 4-inch reflector. This telescope, and other beginner telescopes like it, in my opinion, sadly, are obsolete for learning the night sky these days. You just can't get a decent experience behind the eyepiece anymore with a telescope like this. Now, that's my opinion, and it kills me to say this, because anybody who knows me can tell you that I am a long-time eyepiece jockey. There is nothing like sitting behind an eyepiece under a quiet, dark sky looking at a galaxy. So this is sad times indeed. But all is not lost. While the experience is different than looking through an eyepiece, this telescope is still, I think, very exciting to use. Watching an image build up over time on your smartphone and seeing detail that under the best of circumstances your eye could never make out, well, that's thrilling, even for an old telescope salt like me. So, if you're a beginner and you want to get into amateur astronomy, using a telescope like this one is a real step up. So let's go set this thing up and see how it works. Also, full disclosure, Dwarflabs sent me one of these units, but I am not getting paid. I wish I could get paid. I never get paid on YouTube. Okay, hello everybody. It is daytime. I'm going to go ahead and set this up during the day just so you can see what's going on, because when I do this, the next part, it's going to be in the dark. You won't be able to see anything. But I wanted to show you how to set up the telescope. And in the spirit of how I used to use my Edmund Astroscan 2001, I've set it up here on the tailgate of my truck. And I'm kneeling down here in this awkward position in the hot Florida sun, and the love bugs are starting to come out. The things I do for you guys. Okay, so here's how you set it up. In the spirit of the Astroscan, it's the same kind of thing. It's set up. Now to turn it on, there is a power switch on the top of this. You press and hold it down for a little bit, And the green light, I hope you can see it in the sunlight here. There's a green light spinning around or it's turning on. Yes, the battery indicator is right here. And it's looking now for the smartphone connection. Now, what I do with this telescope is I set it up basically in the direction of things I'm going to be using, either or looking at, either north or south. In this sense, in a minute, since the sun's out, we're going to look at it, and I'm going to face this south. So this is south, more or less. Now there's a little home position arrow indicator on the back of the unit that I usually try to keep kind of lined up when I'm first setting it up. So now it's on, it's waiting for the smartphone app to be found and connected. And we're gonna, since it's out, we're gonna just go ahead and we're gonna look at the sun. I turn this up, but before I actually start looking at it, this unit comes with a couple of neutral density filters for blocking out the sun, and it just snaps on magnetically there. So now we can look at the sun safely through this. So let's see if we can find the sun. All right, so now we're going to, so now I've got the Dwarflab thing, I've got the Dwarflab app fired up, and we're gonna hit the connection button here to find the camera. It's currently searching for the camera and it found it, so we push that button, and now it's connecting. And once it finds it, it wants you to connect to the device. Now it has its own little Wi-Fi router on it, so you're just going to connect to the one on the telescope and disconnect the one from your, if you're on a hotspot or a Wi-Fi, currently it's going to disconnect that. And here we are, we're in the app now. Now to observe the sun with this, you don't see much right now, but this camera has, or this telescope has two lenses, a telephoto lens and a wide angle lens. And the best way to find stuff is by using the little joystick on the bottom. You can adjust the speed right here, which it slews. So we can move it back and forth. So you want to just sort of slew over to where the sun is. And I'm going to point up towards the sun. I hope I don't have to tell you that you that you should never go out and look at the sun directly. So I'm slewing now towards the sun. I'm just sort of looking around for it. There it is in the wide angle view. And I can switch between the two by just clicking on it. As you can see, as always, there are clouds. So I'm going to go ahead and slew this into position. And there you can see it in the telephoto lens. Oops, wrong way. Let me slew it back. All right. I'm going to reduce the speed of this a little bit so I can get more finer control over it. There we go. And once I've got it more or less into the teleview finder of the teleview lens, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the big view and slow it down a bit more and slowly center it. Okay, and then I'm going to hit this feature button, and I seem to be in pano mode. Let me go to photo mode, and then I'll hit the sun, and it will give me some tips on observing it. I will confirm, and now it's tracking the sun. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of clouds in here right now. I'm not getting a very good view, but we are tracking the sun right now. Now, what I like to do with this, first of all, it has an autofocus feature. So I'm going to hit this and hit the autofocus. On the sun, it doesn't do a terrible job because it's very bright, but as you can see with the clouds right now, it's not doing such a great job. So you might want to manually focus this a bit by just doing the little plus or minus keys. Now the plus or minus keys have this little haptic response that you can tell when you've pushed the button. And because I'm behind the clouds, I'm not going to get a very good focus right now. So, but I will get the exposure better. So the way you do that is there's this little slider bars over here. It's a toggle, so you turn them on this way, you turn them off this way. And instead of doing the autofocus, the auto exposure, I have the gain turned way down. I'm not going to do automatic. I'm going to go down to about, let's see, 400. I like to actually see limb darkening. So I'm going to turn the focus the exposure time down until I can start to get a pretty decent limb darkening view of the disc. Now, this is not in focus, but I can already see I've got some limb darkening. So 1/320th or 1/400th of a second is usually I've found pretty good for this. I'm going to leave the gain at 0, and I'm going to turn the IR cut on. The IR cut is this sort of low pass. I guess it cuts out the near infrared, which makes for a slightly better view. So I'm going to get rid of that now. And now let's see. Now we still have clouds, but I can do a little bit better with the focus. There we go. That's a little bit better. So now you can see the sun on here. There we go. Now we're getting away from the clouds a little bit. You can see a sunspot there. Let me do another little focus on it. I did a pretty good job. All right, let's take a photo. Let's see what this looks like. We're going to just click this green circle here. I'll hit the autofocus thing to get that out of the way. And let's take a couple pictures. All right, I took a picture right there. And I took another one. And if you want to take a video, we can do that too. We can just take a little video. Now we're doing that. There we go. Now we're recording. Now we've stopped recording. So, I mean, this is, and now we're observing the sun. I mean, this is got neutral density filters on it, so you're not going to see a lot of H-alpha features, prominences, or filaments, but you will see sunspots. There come the clouds again. You can start to see that, observing the sun's pretty easy. And this is the kind of view you'll get with it. All right, so the next step is we're going to take this outside at night. It'll be dark out, so I don't know what you'll be able to see. I'll do another screen recording of my phone so you can see what I'm doing on it. But with the telescope, we'll start to look at some night sky things next. Hello, everybody. Okay, we are outside on a nice, cool-ish early fall evening in my backyard. And what you are looking at right now is a representation of the night sky as it would appear from my location. But I can assure you what you're seeing right now is way more stars than what I can see out here. Still, it's a nice evening. The nights are starting to cool down a little bit, which is great, and the skies are getting a little bit clearer, although they are still quite bright. Tonight it's late September, and this is one of my favorite times to be out of the year observing, because the nights are starting to cool up and the clouds are going away a bit and the skies are clear. And we are also lucky in that we had a cool front move in earlier yesterday, and that kind of cleared out a lot of the skies as well. So it's a good night for observing. It's very bright, light polluted, and I've got a quarter moon to the south. But I'm facing to the north right now because I have a really good northern horizon. And this time of year, one of my favorite things to look at is the Andromeda Galaxy. I don't know why. It's not really even in the best location in the sky this time of year, but something about late September, early October, I want to see the Andromeda Galaxy. So we're going to do that first. And I've already connected the Dwarflab telescope to my screen, to my telephone, my smartphone, and you're looking at the result right there. Because this video is for beginners, I'm not going to show you how to do this part, but let me just say, look up the section on how to do dark frames. For some reason with this telescope, it takes 10 minutes to take dark frames, but without going into detail, it removes a lot of the noise that you're going to get with your images. You'll get much better images if you do dark frames. And so I've already done that, mostly because it took 10 minutes and there's nothing really to see. But to do it, you just go over here to you said Astro Dark, and then it gives you this thing that tells you what you're doing and why. And as you can see, I've already done it. So I'm not going to bother doing that again. But it keeps your images from getting too noisy. So I'm in astro mode here, and we are looking at the screen, which you can see is noisy right now. Okay, so once you've set it up and turned it on and you've got it connected, you've taken your dark frames, you're ready to start observing. And what I do is I just manually move the telescope so that it's facing south. There's no point in my show, or in this case, north. There's no point in showing you because it's dark out, but the telescope is facing north and up to the close to the zenith. And now what I'm going to do is um, uh, when you hit this feature button, this little menu pops up. We're going to do a calibration, and this is where it looks at where it is in the sky and so that it can make further observations. So let's go ahead and hit calibration, and also do yourself a favor when it is daytime out. Focus this telescope on something far away. Get your telescope focused close before you get out here in the dark, because it is one of the things that is very difficult to do with this telescope is get a proper focus. Now that's the bane of any telescope user's existence. I mean, it's hard to get a focus even with really good equipment unless you have an autofocuser and a lot of expensive computers and stuff. But once you've got the focus, then you can start tweaking it a little bit here. I've already focused. I've actually focused on the moon earlier before I started this video. And we're going to turn to the moon here in just a minute so we can get a full gamut of things that we've looked at with this video. But this video is getting kind of long, so I just want to briefly show you how to use some of the night sky features. So right now the telescope is tracking, and it is focused reasonably well, and it is ready. We're ready to start looking at images. But first I want to set some exposures. This slider bar is off to the left. Open up this menu. You can set your exposure time. The maximum exposure time is 15 seconds. I'm going to set it for that. And also make sure that this IR filter is set to cut, because otherwise your images will be quite red. All right, so to select to select an object to go to, we hit the feature button and then the go to. Right now, I'm getting some star streaks in here, but hopefully that'll go away when I get to the object we're going to look at. So you hit the feature button and then auto go to, and the catalog pops up, and then we can just scroll through this thing. Let's go to the Andromeda Galaxy. All right. It does a quick play solve before it goes anywhere. And now there it is. And I have to say, the tracking on this telescope is remarkably good. In the pointing and the go-to it gets it centered every single time. So I really like this this system and how easy it is to work. It's very reliable. And that blob you see in the center there, that's the Andromeda Galaxy. So let's go ahead and now what I've done is I've said, okay, I'm going to take, oh, it reset my exposures. Let's do this again. We go back to 15 seconds. My gain is set at 80. And we're going to leave we're doing all this in the telephoto mode. So that is, oh, and the IR mode went back for some reason to cut. So or to pass. So let's go to cut. You see how red it is right there. So we're waiting for 15-second exposure. Now you can see the Andromeda Galaxy is much brighter. And the next image, there it goes. That red went away. Now I want to set how many. Now, so what happens in astro imaging, if you're not familiar with it, is that we're taking 15-second images, and we're going to keep taking 15-second images over and over until we get so many. And with every one that it takes, it adds it to the previous exposure. That has the effect of making the object you're looking at, the signal from that object, brighter. And it has the even additional effect of only adding the noise as the square root of the number, and that I didn't mean to get mathematical there. All I meant to say was that this is a common technique for making things brighter without using, or making long exposure images without using long exposures. You can add a bunch of short exposures together. So that's a long-winded way, but I'm going to select this count here. This tells me how many images do you want to add together, and I'm going to add, let's just add 30. We'll add 30 images together. And I'm not going to show you that right now because there's no point. Okay, I'm going to also get rid of all this stuff so you can see it better. Okay, it's a little bit better. Now we can see that blob in the center is the Andromeda Galaxy. Let's hit our red button. And now let's start to take some images. What's going on now is the telescope is taking 15-second images, and it's going to take 30 of them and add them together. There's a very difficult to read line of information at the top right of this that says what the exposure time is, what your gain setting is, and how many you're taking, and the current one that it's currently taking. And it's going to stack them all up. Now let's see, 30 images at 15 seconds. This is going to take a little bit of time. So we're going to come back to this after it's added them up. I'm going to leave this running and we will see what we got. Already you can begin to see that the Andromeda Galaxy is becoming larger. We've stacked 2 images together, so now we've got 30-second exposure. And here we go, there's more. Got 3 now. I may stop this sooner, depends on how it goes. Well, let's go ahead and get the whole 30. But you can see how it's building up this image of a very large spiral galaxy. This is our closest neighbor to us, closest galactic neighbor. Well, that's not totally true. The large and small Magellanic Clouds are closer, but this is a spiral galaxy in our neighborhood. And there is also another satellite galaxy in the upper right, the upper left. It's also in this. Now, what I find amazing about this, what really blows my mind, and this is what I find exciting, and you don't get this with a visual telescope using an eyepiece, is that I could never get this view through an eyepiece under even really dark skies and quite a large telescope. I own a 20-inch Dobsonian and very nice eyepiece, and I can maybe see this level of detail in it on a really good night. But here I am under light polluted skies with a quarter moon casting a shadow across the ground. And look at this. I'm able to see already, there's detail, there's the dust lane up in the top part of the galaxy there. I already can see that, and I could never see that with my eye. So this is what I mean when I say that this experience is different, but it's still exciting. It's not the same as visual observing, but if you're a beginner and you've never done this before, you can do this in like just a couple of hours with these kinds of telescopes. And I think this is thrilling. Here we are, we're building up signal, we're doing very complicated things. A lot is happening all at once. A telescope is tracking is tracking the stars as they go across the sky. A filter is getting rid of some of the infrared that's coming through. We are building up a signal on a CCD image and getting more and more detail with each one. And this is all happening with a box that looks like a one of those 1990s video cameras, right? So this is what I mean when I say that this is a very exciting experience, and I've been doing this my whole life. So I could not get this level of detail, and I haven't bothered with focusing all that much, and I've just come out here and I've just done it because I'm trying to mimic the experience of a beginner,
someone who has never done this before but wants to see what's up tonight, or maybe wants to show their mom or their dad or their significant other, whoever it happens to be, that what's up tonight. And look at this. I mean, we've got 14. How many images do we have here? It says 15 images have been stacked already. So we're halfway there. And more of the disk is starting to be seen across the viewfinder. And as this builds up, we'll get more and more detail. Now imagine, you can just keep going with this. You can do up to, according to the software, 999 of these. At some point, you reach a point where you're not getting much more signal out of this, because ultimately at some point you're going to be limited by the small diameter of the objective here. We're only talking about a 25 millimeter objective, which is smaller than a pair of binoculars. So you're relying on this stacking technique to get any kind of signal at all. But again, this is a light polluted sky. I cannot see. I'm looking up now. I can see the 5 stars of Cassiopeia. I cannot see the Big Dipper. I can only see Polaris and the 2 end stars of the Little Dipper. That's all I can see. I can see Vega almost overhead. I can barely see the parallelogram of Vega, of Lyra, the constellation Lyra. And then that's facing sort of northish. When I face south, which I live north of a city of about 30,000 people, it's a wash in light. I can't see. Well, the moon is also not helping, but the city lights, the light dome, is just blocked out my entire southern hemisphere or southern horizon. So that's sort of what I'm up against here. And look at what we're doing. We're looking at the Andromeda Galaxy. Still building up. I'm going to go ahead and let this go to all 30 of them. Now it's all of these images are being saved on your phone. I'm sorry, they're being saved on a SD disk, the SD card that's stuck in the back of the telescope. And when you're done for the night, you can take that out and put it in your computer, and you can get these off and take a look at them. You'll see the data are stored in 2 different formats, and I won't go into this too big a detail, but every individual frame is being saved as a FITS image. And then the composite stacked image, the one we're looking at right now on this smartphone display, is saved as a TIFF file. And you can take that TIFF file, put it into Photoshop if you want, do a little bit of tweaking on some of the parameters like sharpness or scaling or whatever you might want to do in Photoshop to make it look even nicer. Or you can take the individual FITS images, which is what advanced amateurs do, and that's where the actual data are. The flux and all each individual frame probably won't look like much, but when they're added together, you'll get a much nicer image. And that's what professional astronomers and amateur astronomers use. Okay, we're at 29, and we're very close to finishing this up. And that's the Andromeda Galaxy right there. All right, we've done it. So that is how that is done. Now, and it tells you it's done. And ordinarily, I would maybe go up to M57, the ring nebula, but as I said, this video is getting quite long. So let's go over to the moon just for completeness. So let me go find the moon. There's the moon. Confirm. All right, let's go see the moon. Shoot, I should have changed the exposure time. I'll see what happens. Okay. All right, let me see what's happening here. Uh-oh, I see the problem. All right, so the moon is starting to go behind the trees here. So I typed in the moon. Let me get this down. Let me get the exposure time down to about at 1/30th. Let's keep going, keep going. 1/50th. There we go. 125, 1/250, 1/400. All right. So there we are. It's starting to set behind the trees, so I'm not going to get a good image of the moon. I should have did this first. But anyway, there's the moon as it's setting behind the trees. We could have played with the focus a little bit and saw maybe some detail, but this is a good illustration of what this thing can do, I think. So anyway, all right. So let's go inside and let's finish up this video. This was a quick night observing in Central Florida. Thank you for joining me.
Okay, let's wrap this video up. Now, as I said earlier, this video is meant as an introduction for beginners in how to use this telescope. But there's a couple of things I should mention before I go. First, let me show you the co-added PNG images that were on the telescope. Here is our image of the sun, and here is the little video that we took. Now, in the night observing session, I said that the stacked images are available in TIFF format. That was incorrect. They are in PNG format in the same directory as the FITS files. And here is the image that we took of the Andromeda Galaxy. This is the PNG. And the artifacts that you see in the top right are due to the registering and stacking of the 30 individual frames that we took. Now, this is not too bad for just going out and turning it on. We could make this better with a little more focusing, a little more time on focus, and some photoshopping after we're done. But for a quick night out to see M31, I'll take it. It was simple to do, and it was nice to get outside. Now, I meant to go back out and get a better moon pic, but I really need to get this video out, so maybe we'll do that in the future. Now, one of the really great things about smart telescopes is that once you've purchased the hardware, the companies usually give updates via software that either fix past problems or they add new functionality. Now, as I was making this video, I got an email from Dwarflabs that they have a beta version of the app which lets you stack images of the sun and the moon. And this will be great because it will reduce the noise in those images and improve the quality. Remember, we took a whole bunch of short exposures to get the images we took. Now, since I didn't want to use a beta version to make this video with, I sort of held that off, but I'll give it a try later and let you know. And I think that's great. Sometimes it works out that the telescope you end up with is better than the one you initially bought because of software updates like these and the fixes that they give you. Other things I didn't go into, well, when we were looking at the sun, I manually moved the sun into view. Now, I don't think the Go-To works on the sun. It was easy enough to get going without it. We could just point and sort of see it. But I didn't mention that before, so I thought I'd better now. The beta version of the solar stacking probably improves on that whole experience. Now, there's also a cool eclipse coming up that you guys should know about next year that this should be really neat to use for. Now, I won't be in the path and I don't have plans on going, but for those of you who are, this is a great way to get introduced to solar eclipses with a minimum of expense. You can just follow right along with this. Now, I also didn't do any planetary imaging in this video because this was already getting pretty long, so I may do some of that in the future. And finally, I didn't talk much about why dark frames are important. Basically, the idea is that all detectors have noise that come from various sources, and one of those sources is thermal noise. This is the noise generated by electrons that are hitting the detector because of heat. Now, you really don't notice this noise during daylight imaging and when you're making videos, but you really see it in low light conditions, and it needs to be gotten rid of to get decent pics. Now, the way you take them is you turn off all the lights and you make several exposures with the equivalent of the lens cap on. The manual tells you to put the telescope in the bag and then put it under the sink and to take those darks. But all I did was I just pointed the lens down and I did it in the dark before I started the session. Now, darks are images of that thermal noise that the whole system has, and once subtracted from your real images, it makes things a lot better. So take time to make those. I'm a little baffled why it takes 10 minutes for this scope to create them. Maybe it's taking a whole lot of them, but whatever. It's worth doing for sure, and it's simple to do. Now, I didn't show you much of this capability in this video while I was making it, but there is a mode to take daytime images. Now, here's a pic of my dog Cookie using the nature mode. She's such a good girl. Okay, well, I hope this video helps. This is a good telescope to get you started. It pierces the light pollution fog that most of us live under, and it allows you access to the wonders of the night sky. It's trivial to use, and it's great for casual use by just about anyone without breaking the bank. Now, I've put a link in the description box on where to get one. It's an affiliate link, so if you buy one, I might get a cut, and hey, think about it, you're supporting Deep Astronomy, so thank you. Well, that's it for now, space fans. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep looking up.